Awesome. Caleb, welcome to the Agent Academy podcast, mate.
It's real good to be here, Mitch. It's
Oh,
the first time on a podcast, my podcast debut.
welcome. We'll see how we go. We might be able to get invited back for another if we do well.
It's always dangerous when you give two guys a microphone.
Well, you'll be doing most of the speaking, so hopefully it'll be useful.
Right.
Mate, for those that don't know you, would you be able to give a bit of an introduction to yourself, what part of the country you work in, and the brand that you work for?
I mean, surprise, surprise, I am a real estate agent. I work based out of Christchurch, the Garden City. And I've been in real estate since 2014, but it feels a lot longer than that. My old man, which I suppose we can talk about a bit later on, he was in it for as long as, well, for my entire childhood. So I grew up around it. I worked for him part-time before getting into it myself.
And what was that like having a dad always on the go with real estate? Or I guess you didn't have anything to maybe compare it with, but what was your upbringing like with him as an agent?
Yeah, look, so I grew up with real estate magazines and old listing cards and agency agreements, all over the back seat of the car. I mean, he tried to be pretty organised, but we were delivering flyers for him, that sort of thing. I do distinctly remember when I might have been 4 or 5 years of age and in the car with my mum delivering by hand Christmas cards to his clients because my dad's a Dutchman or of Dutch descent and he didn't want to pay for the postage.
So what was it that maybe he did or inspired you to get into the industry, or was it a bit of a force of the hand from him saying, look, get involved in the industry, we'll see how it goes?
He certainly didn't. I never grew up with the expectation that I'd get into real estate myself. If anything, he probably warned me about what the life of, what a career in real estate can take from you. But in a way, I fell into it. I was studying at university here in Christchurch. I do happen to have a law and political science degree, so I managed to see that out. But I started working for him part-time while I was studying. And in a way, it was just timing. That was during the earthquakes in Christchurch. There was a lot going on, really. It was quite disruptive when you were a student. We had lectures and tents, that sort of thing. The market did grind to a halt, especially in our part of the city, out in the eastern suburbs. It took the government a bit longer to make decisions about what was going to happen with those areas. And so, things went on pause for a bit, and but in the immediate years following it, and similar, I suppose, to what most of the country experienced after the lockdowns, the market took off, which coincided with me finishing my studies. So my dad had been in it for about 20 years at that point, so he got into real estate just before I was born. And so he was established, he had a recognised personal brand, he was well known in his community, and in those immediate years following the earthquakes, his business took off, and so he was in a position where he needed somebody full-time. I always had a bit of an interest in tech and, trying to use different things to looking at the tools that were available to us in the industry and see how they could apply to a real estate context. So, for example, he was an avid writer of commentary, and he would write these snippets that he would just send out to his clients at the time that would accompany his weekly progress reports. And so I gave them the idea. I was like, why don't you give these a broader audience? Should we set up a blog for you? I mean, this is, late 2000s, 2010s. Nobody really had a blog. And so we set that up. And from there, from SEO searches, and as we started writing about people working through earthquake issues and claims and EQC and insurance and all of that, it really became a solid resource for some of these owners to base. Well, it started a conversation with a lot of these owners who wanted to know, okay, well, we've got a few things that we need to work through here. How do we get through it? And so we ended up being the first people that they reached out to, which was awesome.
And what were those early years in real estate like? Did you continue working in and a part of your dad's sales team, or did you look to go out on your own, or what did those first years for you look like?
Yeah, so I started working for my dad, part-time from, I think, 2008. He actually took a sabbatical as the market turned. So that was GFC time. He was just like, I've had enough. I don't want to work through another down market. I'm going to go farming, because that's what he did before. That didn't last long. So he returned to 2010, and then, of course, we had an earthquake in that September. So it was a bit disrupted.
Should have stayed.
So, yeah. Sorry, it is a bit long-winded. 2013, I finished uni. I started working for him full-time as a PA. 2014, I got my license. And from there, it was a transition. So I call myself, unashamedly, because it's upfront, I call myself a real estate Nepo baby. I really respect those people who started from scratch. And hit the ground running and built their businesses from nothing. I inherited a business effectively. So it doesn't mean I work any less hard, I don't think. So from there, I was just working as part of his team. He kind of would refer to me as his ops manager, because I was all across the admin. I think that was a really good base for me to start with. Even now, if my sales and marketing coordinator, Alana's not available to do anything, I know how to do it. I know agents who don't even know how to prepare a contract in e-forms. And they might say that's a great thing, because they're just focusing on meeting people. But for me, it means I'm never left high and dry if somebody else isn't available. I can get the work done if needed. From there, so we kind of transitioned from a team model. We started working more closely in partnership with the assistance of a PA. So I stepped out of more the admin side of things and then more into, the day-to-day appraising, listing, selling. And he retired in 2019. So from there, I just moved into his space, and the rest is history, really.
We see that so often. There's PAs that are, or back-end staff that are doing the support, and they're thinking, I could probably do this, and I think I can do it better. And they go on to running these really efficient and strong, streamlined businesses. What advice would you have for someone that's maybe in that position, that is a PA, or they've come in and they're maybe doing an operational support manager role, or and they're looking to transition into a selling agent? What do you think would be important for them to consider?
I think it's a fantastic base to work from. I know a lot of people who consider real estate as a career are really scared about starting something that they don't know a lot about, and then also not getting that guaranteed income, or that certainty of their income. So I find starting off in an admin position allows you to get your head around the process. There's a lot of jargon that comes with working in real estate, and I remember when I first started, it took me probably at least 6 months to get my head around the different triggers for the next step. I remember preparing for appraisals that my dad would show up to, and then I'm off booking photographers and ordering limbs, because I just assumed that the appraisal would then become the listing.
Yeah.
I was very optimistic. To get your head around the processes, what's involved, and do that from behind the desk first, I think can set you up well for the next step, which is going into sales.
And then a couple of years later, you've obviously gone and started your own agency. What was that feeling like? Obviously leaving a well-known brand in Harcourts and going out on your own, and I guess leaving that legacy that your dad had previously built. What was that feeling like? And were you nervous or a bit worried, or talk me through that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think about it. Maybe a little bit of nerves, but I wouldn't say a huge amount. I think by the time I had made the decision, I was ready, and I think this was something that even my dad and I, would talk about as just this crazy dream that we would do maybe one day. But even back then, it just all felt too hard. One of us would have to go off and get our agent's license. Then we were like, oh, then somebody would need to manage the accounts and do all the back end stuff. And it was easy just to put that to one side and say, oh no, that's not going to happen. And so when I stumbled across Only, I was like, gosh, this just makes it so much more straightforward. I could actually do this. And I think by then, when I had made that decision, I was getting close to the 10-year mark. I think by then, you're doing the same thing, you're getting a little bit tired, you're wanting something new. I put my hand up for management in an office. That didn't last terribly. It didn't last long. I lasted, I think, 9 months. And so I was ready for the next step, but I just didn't know what it looked like until I stumbled across Only, and I was like, here we go.
And for someone considering going out on their own, whether that's Only or going out to do their own thing, what do you think are some maybe checklists or things that they need to consider before they go and make that step?
Yeah, definitely. I think a track record of sales under an established brand is definitely going to support you. A strong database. So, and what I mean by that, so proven track record of sales experience, and by then, I had a couple of hundred sales under my belt. Obviously, I was able to capitalise off my dad's name. We're the only Griffioens in the country, so that's certainly helpful. And even under a big brand, I made a point of investing into my personal brand, and so even during that time, I was big on posting on social media, video content, getting my name out there that way. Because when you're in a big brand, you still need to stand out personally. So I felt like I already had that brand recognition just from my name.
Man, you're someone that I associate a lot of future prop tech or a great personal social presence. What's your approach when it comes to taking on new ideas into your business? Are you a scattergun approach? Let's try everything, give it a couple of months, and then keep it if it lands, and drop it if it's not doing its thing? Or do you go through like a selective process, or is there a way that you evaluate what's going to work in your business and what's not before you try? Because you're someone that I massively respect in that department, especially. I'd love to find out a little bit more about what goes into your approach and to implementing those things.
Okay. I would like to say I'm an early adopter of different tools, in trying to find things that will improve how we go about things. I suppose you could call it a scattergun approach. Try it out for a little bit. If it works well, then you might even just test it on one appraisal or one listing presentation and see how that goes. Is that process any better than what we had previously been doing? And I guess just being open to trying them. If it feels like a good fit, then run with it. If not, move on to something else, or just keep doing what you're doing. I'm also conscious of not trying to reinvent the wheel all the time, but just looking for areas that could do with just a little bit of improvement here and there.
Yeah, totally. I'm big on the future of agents, whether that's a solo operator or running as a small team, really being tech enabled. You're doing both. You've got a small team and you guys are heavily tech enabled. For someone that's maybe going through the phase of looking to grow their business and they're just a solo operator at the moment, would you say they should lean more towards getting tech enabled first and understanding how they can create some efficiencies within their business before they grow? Or do you think, hey, maybe bringing in a running mate or a licensed PA, and then once you guys have this kind of workflow and chemistry, then you can look at the technology? Because when I look at the landscape or I speak to agents, I really feel there's this combination of like, some are just like, it's always worked this way, I'm going to keep on working like this, and they don't have any idea of what's actually available to them. And then there's the those kind of next steps that we're talking about in terms of team or tech. What would your advice be? Because you're doing both. What advice would be for the next step?
I think you do need a team. I mean, when I went out and started Griffioen, it was just me. And I very quickly found myself, it didn't take much for me to reach full capacity.
Yeah.
Because even with all the tech tools available, you can only hold so many open homes in one day, or you can only be in one place at a set time. So I found very quickly, I think it was May 2023, I went out on my own, and it was a bit of a slower start than most. Hats off to those people who can just come out of the starting blocks, and launch 10 listings. I think I started with one. But by February 24, I had brought on Jonathan. And for me, that was the next step. So I with half a dozen listings, and they're active listings, we were running auction campaigns, deadline campaigns, I was struggling to even just keep up with that. And definitely with the style that I market properties. Like if, in a slower market where, 6 listings is easy because you're not getting a lot of inquiry, or you're only doing one open home a week, that's probably quite manageable. But, we're opening at least Saturdays and Sundays. And, if they're all active, I can't squeeze 6 open homes into one day unless I'm starting at 9:30 in the morning when nobody shows up. So for me, getting that extra assistance from a person really helped. I made the most of the tools that only made available to me. We started off with using the VA support service, which was fantastic. They're highly skilled, highly trained. Hats off to you, Rebecca. And they're available to me 12 hours of the day, which was amazing. So working split shifts. And for me, when it was Jonathan and myself, I knew that we'd get to a point where it would make sense to then bring on a full-time in-person PA. And even looking beyond that, how I would see us probably for the next step would be to then engage a VA for Alana, our sales and marketing coordinator, so she can outsource some of those more mundane day-to-day tasks, so that she's focused on the bigger picture as well.
And it's interesting. I've just spoken to Kirsten from Fusion, and she spoke about how having a running mate and going and getting full capacity as 2 agents and then bringing on a PA then allowed them to go and get the volume, they've got the momentum, and then passing off those administrative tasks was actually a way for them to create more momentum. While I've spoken to Quinton Wenger, who's a franchise owner at Ray White, and some other top performing agents, where they actually spoke about doing the opposite, where bringing on that licensed PA in the beginning to take care of those admin tasks early actually allowed him to be freed up, and he was a hustler. He was like doing the door knocking, doing the thing, and that allowed him to grow. In your opinion, which should people look to go for first? The running mate, by the sounds of that's what you've done, or possibly the PA?
I suppose it comes down to what your strengths are. Like, not all salespeople are strong at admin and process and and whether it's marketing. For me, that was one of my strengths. I was quite capable of doing a lot of the admin and then also getting the extra support from our VA service. So for me, it made sense then to get another agent on board to assist with the face-to-face contact. A lot of salespeople, probably more natural-born salespeople, aren't administratively strong. So for them it would make sense to then bring on somebody who is. And then even having a licensed PA who can do some of that work that's required from an agent is definitely helpful. So I'm saying, yeah, both can be right. It just depends on what your strengths are.
Yeah, I love that. If you were to be sitting down with an agent and they're going, Caleb, Matt, I've been doing this for 5 or 10 years, I've gone through my ups and my downs, and, I'm just going through a bit of a slow patch at the moment, and I'm not really sure where to start and where I can go and, rebuild this next phase of my career. What would be, I guess, the first 3 things that you'd be getting them to either think about or, go and implement over the next 3 months for 2026 to be, the re-ramp of their career? Okay,
10 years in the industry, you're a bit stuck, you're in a rut. I suppose it's a case of just reevaluating, and it sounds really cliche, like what is your why? But I think it makes sense to start there, because I think some people just get stuck doing what they're doing day in and day out, and they feel like they can't get out. And, if you're like, there's a lot of stress and uncertainty and ups and downs in this career, where it might not make sense for you to keep doing what you're doing for the amount of income that you're earning from it. Or the money might be great, but you're actually kind of hating life. So you kind of need to look at the big picture in a way and then reassess, okay, well, what's important to me? I think if you really want to get your career restarted, I think it's about really thinking about how you are positioning yourself in the market. We talk about how properties are positioned in the market, but there's no shortage of real estate agents out there. So what is setting you apart from them? Finding what, I know I say this even to some of our newer team members as well, find a way that connects with people that you enjoy doing, as opposed to trying to force yourself into doing something you hate doing. Because if you hate it, it's, why are you doing it in a way? Like, you're not going to get any joy out of it. So, like, what I really enjoy doing is I really like the marketing side of things. I like making content. I like thinking of new ways to put myself out there. And so that's where most of my focus is. For other people, it might be more interpersonal, meeting up with past clients or potential clients in person, taking people out for coffee, engaging with them one-on-one. Some people really love the hunt and of door knocking and cold calling. For me, not so much. So finding a way finding a way of connecting with people that's focused on them bringing you business. And so I often think, okay, well, who is hearing from me today about real estate? Because if somebody can see something from me that they then connect with real estate, I think that's been a productive day.
Matt, I love that. I think it's such a simple thing to say in practice, but the reality is you can actually go and make it work. Like, if you're someone that enjoys just having a little pocket of their day where they do some cold calls, like, that works. If you enjoy being out in the sunshine and dropping some flyers, like, if you do that consistently, that works. Or the door knocks, that works. Or if you go and join community groups because you like being involved in the community, like, I think by the sounds of your advice there, it's just like, find what you like doing, because if you like doing it, you'll be able to do it consistently. And if you do it for long enough, that's where the momentum can build from. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Matt, there's a couple of golden nuggets that I've taken away from this, and I think for anyone that's listening, I think there's a whole bunch of value. For me personally, it was understanding the tools and not overloading yourself, just implementing a few things when they come up, so that way you can run a solid business. Looking to find that running mate, and whether that looks like a business partner, a buyer's agent, or a PA based on your own skill set, and then just that positioning in the market. What can you do for long enough to be able to create attention? Mate, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope it's been helpful.